In this video, I will talk about the Helios-Zeus connection um, and the Cult of Helios. All right. Helios is referred to as Zeus's eye, or clearly implied to be. Hesiod effectively describes Zeus's eye as the sun. This is possibly derived from earlier Proto-Indo-European religion, in which the sun is believed to have been envisioned as the eye of Dios Vater, si havare kashate. Okay. Now, a lot of this information is from Wikipedia. They're referencing a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of these myths are intertwined. It goes on and on and on and on, as you can imagine. This is an attempt to kind of compile the most important parts of it that paint the picture quite clearly. I don't see it as important for me to understand any adverse religion, as I see them as reactions to the martial arts order. Okay, but this is basically in a nutshell, maybe not in a big nutshell, what is going on. So anyway, Zoroaster was considered the beginning of the line of philosophers to some. And after that, you get the Greek philosophers. We'll get into that in a moment with the 12 Olympians. Anyway, sun worship was prevalent and powerful among the people of the pre-Hellenic culture, but very few communities maintain it as an important part of state culture or state religion. We have an unavoidable Athenian bias when one looks at ancient Greek religion because of the information that's available and why only that information is available. You should be suspicious, to say the least. No Athenian could be expected to worship Helios or Selene, quote unquote, but they might think them to be gods. Helios was the great god of roads, and Selene was worshipped at Elis and elsewhere. So Selene, Sel in E, right? Sel, the idea that on is E and so on, and El is, right? Elis. All right, so we look at what we see here is there's unavoidable conclusions that elves with bows, right? Goes back to far shooter, Apollo. We see elves with bows have taken over because the foot soldiers are more likely to be slaughtered in combat. So the females, the lesbians, the bisexuals, the LGBT, the feminists, etc., and the kind of beta male guys with bows, right? The elves you see in the Lord of the Rings and so on. These guys are elevated above other people, right? The humans are just humans who stumble upon the ring. The elves are these magical people, right? Anyway, so they basically have replaced the foot soldier order of Helios, and so we see the rise of Apollo, and that's pretty much where we are today with the Hellenistic culture. Hell on earth, demos as the peasant. Democracy is basically an elf-run joke with illusion and elven magic, right? And these people resemble the Jews, just like the philosophers, and that's why it's the Abrahamic faith and so on and so forth. Abraham, Ur, Chaldea, Babylon. I've gone over that. You should watch the series again. You should watch the series several times if you missed the point. The insights are key here, and a lot of people present it in a way that's despicable, and they do not include the insights. So let's continue with the Cult of Helios, shall we? There is, the idea of the acknowledgement through worship as laws. Most people don't understand that to be an American, you have to worship the Greco-Roman mythology that includes these people that look like Jews on the highest level, if not some of the highest levels. Okay. According to James Notopoulos, this looks like a Greek name, quote unquote, to believe in the existence of the gods involves acknowledgement through worship as laws. The laws in America are written for you to worship their gods, right? Freedom of religion, to rejoin. Rejoin who? To rejoin the African beginning, or to rejoin the Hellenistic area 322 BC. Or perhaps when the Dorians took over 1300 to 1100 BC, some people doubt them, that they were the ones that wiped out the Mycenaeans, but for whatever, their culture kind of fades away, and we see this new one replacing it. I don't believe that any period in recorded Greek history is the actual truth when it comes to religion and the point of life. I believe. I was cut off, so yeah, as I was saying, I don't believe that any period in Greco-Roman history is the truth spelled out plainly. Nor do I believe that there are mysteries that allow for one to connect to God. I believe it is all illusion, and it is painfully obvious, and that you absolutely know them by their works, And even for the most wise men, there is not a path to connect to the Creator that is allowed for in our culture. Anyway, so again, to believe in the existence of the gods involves acknowledgement through worship as laws. These are the laws in our society. And of course, these symbols are worse than the swastika. The swastika represents a certain period of time. It could perhaps even be subtly or otherwise referring to Helios, who's just one deity. Okay? But when you look at all these deities together, okay, when you consider how they interact with each other, what their purpose are, these deities are basically symbols of rape and murder and drugging and cheating and illusion and denying people their free will and a chance to connect to the Creator, and going to great lengths to study people and to prevent them from doing things in a way that is outside of this mystery and mythology system. This is why it is said that all roads lead to Rome. They do not allow for you to exist if you do not acknowledge through worship, right? Worship through your activities, through your cultures, whether you're a rock and roll fan with posters and tattoos and makeup and earrings and so on and so forth, and nose rings and what have you, whatever that culture consists of, whether you're a cowboy, all these different cultural paths lead to worshiping these deities, whether you see it that way or not, I assure you. And mental health drugs people and dumbs them down and goes out of their way to neuter them, chemically castrate them like they are doing to me, if they seek to connect to God or their ancestors, if they're outside of this system, which goes back 1,600 years, which is a lot further back than most people trace their history and religions and cultures. They do not take into account the West telling the story, the colonists choosing house niggas from their cultures to tell the story in a way that results in these people worshiping their ancestors. I accuse every major group and movement, every culture that we have in the public view of doing things in a way that does not acknowledge the Creator, first and foremost, that does not truly acknowledge the Creator or the martial arts order, and does not even allow for one to connect to their own ancestors, but they trick them into worshiping the deities, okay, and the laws and the mental health system and all cultures and religions that are in mainstream view, in public view, the countercultures, etc., all cultures but mine, of ultimately leading to the worship of these deities. So again, I accuse all cultures, religions, and movements other than mine of ultimately doing things in a way that causes the worship of these deities because of the lifestyles they lead and the ideas that they're touching on, which are all outside of the martial arts order, the true martial arts order, and they all have ill-gotten gains and so on and so forth. One way or another, it leads them to looking at these people as superior to themselves. All right. So when we look at the Greek 12 Olympian gods of the Achaemenid Persians, okay, Helios and Selene were considered minor gods when we consider these ideas. Again, the Colossus of Rhodes on the island of Rhodes had a rite of a chariot driven into the sea off a precipice to symbolize the plight of Phaeton. And I think about the word, it's a play on words, Phaeton, where there was annual gymnastics in his honor, right? Obviously, this wordplay, again, for the 1,000th time plus, right? 1,000th plus time has proven to be accurate. Okay, gymnastics, Phaeton. Again, On is the cult center of Heliopolis, Helios. This is the cult of Helios. Okay, so annual gymnastics in his honor. Helios also had a cult on the Acropolis of Corinth. When you read the Bible and you look at Corinthians and the different Ephesians and so on, when we look at the word Ecclesiastes and so on, these ideas are pagan ideas. There's no way around the connection between the Greco-Roman mythology mysteries and the Bible. The Bible is basically the mystery guys reacting to the martial art order at that point, and the previous reactions to the martial art order giving a new religion for the purpose of self-direction. We'll get into that momentarily. Helios had a cult on the Acropolis. Okay, the Dorians seem to have revered Helios. Okay, remember the Dorian invasion came after the Mycenaeans, 1300 to 1100 BC. The Dorian invasion wiping out Mycenaean artifacts. Okay, So the Ionians also said to help, perhaps theorized to have helped wipe out the Mycenaeans who made contact with the Minoans, right, with Crete and homosexuality. They've been gay for quite some time. The Ionian, or a lot of them at least, and certainly it becomes dominant at some point, certainly well before the Hellenistic period. But with Athens in charge, we certainly have a homosexual and pedophile version of history. That's where pederasty was really popular. Athens, 500, 400 BC, leading up to the 332 BC date of the Hellenistic period. The Ionian pre-scientific study of the sun, a study the Greeks termed meteora. Okay, this is significant in the trial of Anaxagoras, because there was a clash there in regards to this in 450 BC, and it's said to be a forerunner to the trial of Socrates. Okay, and leads us to Plato's Republic, where the sun is the symbolic offspring of the idea of good, which goes back to Horus, right? Her eyes, whore is. She's being whored. She's being trained to pretend to be good, right? The idea of good. Not actually being good, but the role in society of being good. It's like saying, some daddy's little girl in some rich neighborhood, right, sent to this nice school, who's taught these ideas. Is he really good? No, she's the offspring of Satanism and ill-gotten gains. And she's going to grow into a harlot. She's a little snake. She's a little serpent. It's stupid not to see it that way. Okay? Is it the idea of good? Yes. Is she going to be turned out by this occult system? Yes. Is she taking on the image and the cultivation of Helen and the Sabines and Hera and any statue of any whore you can see in this system? Yes. Are they whores? I tell you the truth, so help me on ancestors. There are more whores than those bitches in Vegas. These people have scientifically studied how to be the most detestable kind of whores. Of course they're whores. Of course they're whores. My goodness. I used to be a Crip. Of course they're whores. Helen, the local solar deity in Sparta. And I'll end it there.